everything has to be mobile. If you don't have the ability for candidates to apply for a job within your organization via their mobile device, chances are you're going to lose a lot of those candidates that aren't willing to take that extra step and find a desktop. If you have millennials that have more power and technology in their pocket and at home than they do within their own employer, it says a lot.
Welcome to IndustrialSage, a free video podcast series all about digital marketing for industrial manufacturers. Hear interviews with your peers and find out how they're solving the same challenges that you might be facing in your own field. Coming to you from the Optimum Production Studio in Atlanta, Georgia, this is IndustrialSage.
All right, so let's jump into today's episode. We've got Andrew Dickson and Adam Bowling from ADP. So small company, never heard of you guys. Totally blank. So thanks so much for joining on. Before we really jump into everything, if you guys just kind of introduce yourselves to the audience, tell us a little about yourself and the small company called ADP.
Yeah, small company, ADP. Adam and I really appreciative, thankful to be here and have a conversation with you today. So ADP, obviously we've been around for a while. Started the payroll industry over 60 years ago, and payroll is what a lot of organizations know us as. It's come to be only about 20% of our annualized revenue, and we've become kind of transitioned more to a global leader in HCM and human capital management, both software and support. So excited to share a little bit about that with you today. But from a payroll standpoint, I mean, we do pay 1 in 6 Americans. We have over 650,000 clients, a seat at the IRS, and we do the jobs report for the U.S. Bureau of Labor and Statistics. So when it comes to data, employee and people records, where we truly are the industry leader, and I'm excited to share about how we work with manufacturer organizations as well.
Awesome.
Yeah, so like Andrew, district manager with ADP, and Andrew said it, our business has transformed, as have many people in the marketplace. So today our focus is more on digital flows of information, how we can integrate our systems with other business systems, as well as third-party applications out there. So transitioning away from your traditional desktop computing environment, moving toward more of a digital, flexible workforce.
Perfect.
And Adam and I personally cover our major account mid-market segment, if you will. So we focus on organizations between 50 and 1,000 employees. But we have partners that focus on organizations both up and downstream. Yeah. So we can really focus on helping organizations of any size.
Thanks so much for coming on the show. And so one of the things that we want to talk about is we're seeing this across the board, the changing workforce. There's a lot of, we talk about, digital transformation, all these things that are going on, the big, bad, scary millennials, we hear about that a lot. And really at the end of the day, the face of your new prospect, your customer, your new hire, your new supplier, it's getting a lot younger. And okay, fine, we've gone through that, but the way that people want to be communicated to, are you guys seeing a change in what that looks like? What has your experience been, in that?
Yeah, we've definitely seen a shift in the marketplace from kind of the old way of doing business to the new. I'm really identified 4 primary factors that have been affecting this change. One, obviously, changing political and economic conditions. New administration comes new legislation and that affects compliance, and business owners have to stay on top of that to ensure that they're within compliance. The digital revolution, I mean, everything is going digital.
Yes.
You mentioned millennials have not only a desire but an expectation for the ability to not only attract and go after a new job from a digital format, whether it be the application process, the onboarding process, but also given the tools to do their job efficiently,
right.
From a technological standpoint. And the other 2 factors are the augmented workforce and then the changing talent demands. So augmented workforce, that's going to be robotics, artificial intelligence, a lot of leading technologies that businesses are looking to learn how to harness to continue to grow and achieve their organizational objectives. And then last is that changing talent demand, where this is the first time we've ever had 5 generations in the same workforce at the same time. And Gen Z is right there as well. So being able as an organization not only to address the very different expectations of those generations around compensation and benefits, but also to create a culture and environment that welcomes those different generations and then helps them develop from within and ensure that they have a path to develop within the organization that could set them up for whatever their personal goals are.
Right. Yeah. So it was interesting. So 5 generations, under one roof, if you will. Obviously, we're seeing when we're hearing too a lot of challenges between how to communicate and how to manage all that stuff to everybody there. Maybe if you give a little bit of a breakdown and a definition of the different generations, I think that'd be helpful. You hear Gen Z, and sometimes there's a little bit of like, well, it's from 1980, whatever.
Yeah.
What does that look like?
So you've got baby boomers, retiring 10,000 a day is the stat that we frequently go by. You still have some traditionalists in the workforce where we talk to companies quite often that say, our 90-year-old owner still likes to come in every day and check on things and make sure everything's going well. So you've got end-to-end varying opinions on different things, on culture, on engagement, on talent. And there's this shift in mindset toward now companies having to appeal to end-to-end your oldest and both youngest employee that's an eligible hire. And the reason is that statistically we're at full employment. So as a company, I can't only focus on appeasing the workforce that's driven my business for the last 30 years.
Right.
It's now more of a shift toward what are the type of employees that are going to help drive my business forward the next 30 years.
Right.
So Andrew said it as well. I'd be hard-pressed to say he and I aren't millennials. Maybe all of us.
Yeah, I think we all fall in that camp.
But now so now we're looking not just at millennials, but Generation Z. And the fact that, like my son, for example, he'll only know digital. He won't know what a computer is. And there was recently, I think, a commercial about that, and somebody said, get off your computer, and the person said, what's a computer?
Yeah.
They're sitting there on a tablet.
Yeah.
So there's this big shift. And,
Absolutely.
We're just trying to make sure that the companies that we provide solutions for have the ability to provide solutions across the board.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And so I saw an interesting stat. They were talking about the different sizes of the generation. So the baby boomers being, they're retiring at 10,000 a day, but that was a Gen X after that is like half the size of the boomers, and then underneath that, what is it, the millennials?
Yeah.
But they're like twice the size. So so what's going on because of all that? So we've got these numbers that are like this. Like what's sort of the consequences of that?
I would say the biggest gap is that you've got employees now, or really we'll call them workers, seeking different alternatives to traditional employment. Gone are the days of folks, I think, entering the workforce looking for a 9-to-5 that I can work until I retire at 65.
Right.
So now you've got so many options in the workforce. You have people opting out of traditional employment and looking to multiple sources of income as they can in various part-time roles.
So a little bit of the gig economy?
Or as contractors, yeah. So there's, I don't need to go through them, but 100 different ways that somebody can earn an income outside of being a W-2 employee. So with that, as that group of baby boomers is retiring, and to your point, half again as many Gen Xers backfilling those roles, you've got this big area of opportunity in millennials and Gen Z who are choosing rather to enter those roles to opt out and work non-traditional methods. So that's where we help companies really get strategic as far as aligning their business goals with their people goals and the strategy behind them. So we like to take a longer view when we sit down and talk to groups to really identify how they can target better candidates, onboard them faster, and get them up to speed more quickly.
Right. So, as a result, you mentioned that there's that big gap there. So, what are some of those key differences? I guess what we're getting at essentially is that like we talked about maybe a little bit at the beginning, the face of your customer, your prospect, your next hire, your supplier, basically is getting younger. All right, fine. What does that mean in terms of like messaging and how to communicate? What are some of those big differences that companies really should be looking at, saying, hey, we need to be communicating this way versus that way? Are you seeing any big differences?
I mean, specifically within that digital revolution, it is mobile. Everything has to be mobile. If you don't have the ability for candidates to apply for a job within your organization via their mobile device, chances are you're going to lose a lot of those candidates that aren't willing to take that extra step and find a desktop and go, or even companies that are even a step further back than that with a paper application.
Sure.
Things that were the norm now can be a deal breaker for a millennial looking for an organization that's going to provide them the tools not only to be efficient at their job, but if you have millennials that have more power and technology in their pocket and at home than they do within their own employer, it says a lot.
Right.
And will result in them looking for those organizations that are trying to get ahead of the curve and create an atmosphere that can leverage the millennials' ability to leverage technology. And again, a millennial speaking for millennials, we're a wide group. And so it's tough to pinpoint something that's going to affect all millennials just as it would with any other generation. But there are some non-negotiables that organizations have identified you have to have if you're looking to attract top talent, especially with the unemployment all-time lows that we have right now.
Sure, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You had something to add there?
Well, I was just going to say to your early point about how it affects end-to-end the organization. I mean, this same group are also consumers.
Sure,
right?
yeah.
So it may also change their perspective on that company that they once thought maybe, hey, this is a great place where I would love to work.
Right.
And then they go through it from a candidate perspective to find out it's not the same as it is when I am a consumer purchasing from them directly. So we're looking at, you probably heard of gamification.
Absolutely, yeah.
But ways to appeal to the candidate the same way they would as a consumer.
Right.
If I can shop online, can I apply for a job there? If the answer is no, or there's a big disconnect in their ability to do that, it might, to Andrew's point, shift them away and make them look elsewhere for employment.
Right. So I would imagine we could take those same lessons and apply that on a sales and marketing front. In other
Absolutely.
words, like you mentioned, we hear this a lot. You're seeing a lot of e-commerce and stuff coming in. Is that the expectation? Well, the way that we buy is dramatically different, and that's across the board. I don't care whether you're necessarily boomer, Gen X, millennials. There's a thing called Amazon out there. Everyone is a lot more accustomed to quickly getting access to their information and being able to, in 2 days, boom, I've got products. So imagine there's that expectation saying we need to have that even in a B2B environment. Where maybe not necessarily buying toilet paper, but if we're buying O-rings and gaskets, like why don't we have that same experience?
Right. And it's only. The expectation is that end-to-end time from add to cart to that product or service being executed, it's only getting shorter. So
exactly.
Companies only have less time to make to execute.
Walmart just rolled out that they're going to offer 2-day delivering in an effort to compete with an Amazon. Otherwise, if you don't continue to evolve and compete, you're going to get left behind.
Yeah.
Well, and from the sales and marketing side too. I mean, we talk about from a consumer perspective. Internally, the culture of that company ends up being externally the brand, right?
Yeah.
So if you've got a great brand, but then you look internally in the culture of that organization because of gaps, either in their workforce, maybe I'm top heavy with a lot of older workers, and I don't have enough backfill there. That transition could really disrupt the culture, which ultimately, you get a bunch of disengaged folks. That aren't excited to show up and work with somebody that's twice their age, or for somebody else working with somebody half their age. It could be detrimental to the culture, which ultimately could impact the brand and sales marketing efforts as a result. So it's pretty important that companies really start now, before it's too late, because the gap's only growing between business potential and technology available, and it's overwhelming. So we want to be there to be able to advise and present options so that companies can solve for it the way they want to.
Absolutely. Andrew, you had a great little worksheet or I guess a document there, one pager that kind of broke down the different generations there. I love it. Could you maybe walk through that a little bit?
Yeah, and I don't know if the camera will see it too well, but it's different strokes for different folks. It talks about the changing expectations around compensation and benefits.
Yeah.
Both, when you're looking at a new job, compensation and benefits, it's always the top two things that you focus on. But it's really interesting that as you go from baby boomers to Gen X to millennials and now to Gen Z, the compensation is becoming less important and the benefits is becoming more important. How much you get paid is still incredibly impactful in the decision to look at a new organization, but the younger the generation, the more that work-life balance, the more the benefits around things, even as seemingly small as pet insurance, can be such a big factor when a younger generation is looking for a company that meets their ideals and their values.
Yeah.
And so it is very interesting what the different generations weigh in terms of most important versus least important when they're looking at new opportunities.
Well, I think the takeaway from the sales and marketing standpoint is that we've seen this in a lot of case studies too. Like Caterpillar had a great one based on a survey that Google put out, some stats this is back in 2015, and they came out and they said, hey, at that time, nearly 50% of your B2B buyers are millennial. Now that was 3-4 years ago, depending on, we're at the tail end of 2018 here. Imagine what that is now. And Caterpillar kind of took it and said, that's really interesting. Maybe we need to, flip this a little bit more. So even though I know we're talking about, compensation and benefits and all, I think part of the big messages we're talking about is a little bit more purpose. I think that maybe the buy-in of millennials is a little bit more buying into what's in it for me. What's the purpose, and it's a little bit more story-driven, a little bit more, this feeling that I get. And I think that really needs to be translated and transmitted and communicated, as such versus, dollars and cents. Does that make any sense at all?
Yes, it does.
So let's talk a little bit about this. We were talking a little bit about this earlier. I can't talk now, but it's a Monday.
Right.
The transfer of knowledge. Okay, so I know that's a big thing that is affecting a lot of people. Where you've got people that have been in the organization for 30, 40 years, and there's a little bit of a labor gap. There's an issue with getting the right talent into your plant and into your organization, and attracting them, and then also again to that marketing aspect. We talked about some solutions there a little bit. You had a pretty cool thing. Maybe talk about that.
So one thing we talk to a lot of companies about is just that, how did you get to where you are today? And out of a need, over time, companies end up swapping out solutions, products, services, technology to help them get through their day-to-day. And what we found is that oftentimes they can get so wrapped up in what is going on right in front of them operationally that they don't have the ability sometimes to step back and really look at it from an outside perspective. So when we discuss with groups things like this, how are we addressing this gap in talent, we bring solutions to the table that they might not otherwise have thought of. I mean, nothing new that's not been done before, but the example I have most recently is a group that's looking to make their production type work more attractive. How can we attract younger employees? How can we transfer knowledge from someone who is that 30-year veteran who shows up and does this job in their sleep? And we provided a few examples. One of them being a career progression for that new hire to give them a next step in their career path, and just knowing that they have something to work toward could be the thing that determines whether or not they stay another 6 months or another 8 months. But then for that older employee that is nearing retirement, they're probably closer to the end of their career, and you've got these younger workers coming in. On the other side, structured in a way that now they are the mentor, and that there's maybe an incentive for them, compensation-wise or some other bonus, to transfer that knowledge and to bring that employee up to speed faster. So there's a way to do it smartly on both ends to, one, make the young worker feel like there's a progression here, this company cares about my development, and by the way, I'm going to be learning from one of their top performers. And at the same time, that top performer gets the recognition and maybe gets the compensation, or I don't want to speak for somebody making that decision, but there's an ability to do it and appeal to everyone and make everyone happy, and really just ultimately close that gap in skills.
Excellent. Yeah, excellent. I'm going to ask you. I did not prep this question. I'm just curious.
No worries.
So, what advice would you give to somebody saying, from a sales and marketing front, knowing millennials and what's important to them? What would you say are the top, let's say, 3 ways of communicating that manufacturers really need to be thinking? Whether that's style, the way they transmit, or what are you guys seeing?
I mean, we've probably all heard it, like a picture's worth 1,000 words.
Yeah.
Many a time I've looked to do research on a company to find a very antiquated website,
Right.
Maybe with some broken links or bad information. I would say that in an era where I can ask Alexa quickly to give me feedback or information, everything's out there on the web for somebody to find, and that millennial is going to be doing research. So I would look at it from that perspective. Research your own company and see what you find.
Yeah.
And if you don't like what you find, it's worth a conversation with somebody like Andrew or myself to bring a new perspective and really to update you on what the rest of your industry or the rest of the marketplace is doing. Because whether that company chooses to make any changes, right, or not, their peers are evaluating ways to lean into more of the new technology that manufacturers and really anybody in commercial and industrial wants to, which would be our Internet of Things, robotics, machine learning,
Right.
without a basis for just a general system of record. If everything is spreadsheets and paper and in somebody's head, how do I report on that? How do I use that data to make business decisions? So for us, it's really about, I think, probably establishing just that flexible foundation first with a company. So that's the easiest way to really start evaluating ways to go forward and really to appeal to the next generation client, consumer, buyer, but also worker, sales force, who's going to execute for them and who's going to be a good enough brand ambassador externally and culturally a fit internally. So there's a lot of things at play. But I will say that the companies that are taking the longer view and that are putting things in place now for later are getting a competitive edge.
I mean, just to give a tangible example, I would look at a company that has automated their onboarding process. So electronic onboarding, where the employee accepts the job, they're sent a link where they can go in, fill out all their new hire paperwork, look at a video on the company that shows a little bit about the culture, shows them their team, who's going to be their manager, who are their direct reports, gives them stuff to get them excited about the organization before you start, versus a company who makes an offer, brings you in day one, gives you a big stack of paper to fill out your new hire paperwork, and that's your first day. So when you're looking at the onboarding experience of those companies that understand that first experience is the brand, is the image of your company, and then ensuring that your job board, your website, and the process of bringing on new employees reflects that. It is a disconnect that some organizations are on top of and really making great strides, while others don't see it as impactful, and they're losing talented people.
Wow, that's such great advice. I mean, really, at the end of the day, and you can that can go really across the board. I mean, at the end of the day, if you really want to attract millennials and the younger workforce, this is where you need to be thinking. So I love your idea of saying, look at your website. If it's super antiquated and it looks like that first starting point.
Well, and ask yourself, when you buy, if you buy,
what do you see?
When you buy, who do you buy from? Do you buy the cheapest product with the lowest review, or do you buy the most expensive product with the highest reviews? Do you look for that option in the middle, or any combination? So where as a company do you fall? It's a direct reflection of what your consumer says. Why is it any different than what your employees reflect? So we look to that data all the time, whether that's could be from a variety of sources, things
Yeah.
we see on Indeed, Glassdoor. There's tons of resources. A company's Google review,
Yeah.
Facebook. How many stars do you have?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I know that for me, if I'm a leader of an organization, my initiative should not be status quo if those rankings and ratings are any less than stellar.
Right. Yeah.
Otherwise, I've just become complacent, and I've recognized that despite knowing that there's an issue, I'm willing to do nothing to fix it.
Yeah.
So the companies that are not okay with status quo, that want to push that 3-star to a 4 or 5-star or better across whatever platform,
Yeah.
those are the companies that are going to come out comparatively winners.
Yeah.
So.
And even the ones that know there's improvements that could be made, but don't really know where to start, or think they're on the right track but aren't sure. You've got to find a way to benchmark your organization against those organizations that you're looking to compete with. Personally, from an ADP standpoint, the data that we touched on at the beginning allows us to work with organizations and benchmark them against other similar organizations, whether it be the size, the industry, the location, and from that data we can pull information on compensation to ensure that organizations are competitive when it comes to pay.
Sure.
When you're looking to make a new hire and you want to make sure that your benefits package at least meets the industry standard, or maybe you want to be the leader in the industry and you want to attract the best of the best.
Right.
You have to find ways to use the data and the analytics to benchmark your organization against other organizations to confirm you're on the right path, or maybe to see the road on the path that you want to take.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, it totally makes sense. Jumping back, actually, when you're talking about onboarding, I thought you kind of struck a chord with me on that as well. I think it's a great, it's super important to be able to have to create that experience there. And again, that's something that we should be thinking about. To even in the post-sales process. I mean, you think about it, you're still selling. Even if you're recruiting new talent to come internally, you are selling, right? If we're selling a product or a service to somebody, obviously it's sales there. And having that onboarding experience to create a good experience. Actually, I was just last week. I stayed at a Ritz-Carlton with a client, and I don't stay there a whole lot. And I was very wowed by the whole experience. I thought, wow, they were very attentive and all these different things, kind of things you were talking about. Not necessarily super technology driven. I mean, some of them were, but I just thought, wow, that is a really great experience to continue on. That's something we need to bring. I think I might actually even do a blog article about it. But,
Nice.
Well, I mean, you wanna create a raving customer,
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
Because then that same message, transcends down into employee, and then you've got employees that are doing the same, bragging on their company and their so.
I'm a firm believer that everybody, and it doesn't matter what role you're in, everybody's selling. So sales and marketing touches all these different areas. To your point, to your workforce. If your workforce is engaged and they're excited and they have purpose and there's a mission, then they're going to be the best advocate. Oh, you got to buy from us. We got the best product. We got this or that, and that goes downstream. I mean, and upstream. I mean, it's across the board. So it's super important. So, well, listen, guys. Thank you so much for coming on. There's a lot of great insights that we were able to take away from this, and I thank you for your time. If anybody has any questions on the show, they'd love to reach out to. What's the best way of getting in touch?
Yes, best way would get in touch with me. Ultimately, you could email me, andrew.dickson@adp.com.
Perfect.
Or my cell phone's on my business card. I'll give you a stack of those as well.
Okay.
Yeah, same, adam.bowling, so just our name at adp.com.
Perfect. All right. Well, great. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Danny. Appreciate it.
Hey, listen, another great episode here. A lot of key takeaways. Some of the key things that I was thinking about is, like Adam was mentioning, hey, ways to start, ways that you can be thinking about this is just do a self-evaluation. Go look at your website, see what you find. Go look at how you buy products and kind of measure that against like what you are, the experience that your company has versus the experience that you've had with others. It's a great starting point. It's got to be visual. You've got to bring in technology. And a really big thing is, and I kept hearing, is that things are changing. It's not working the way that it used to, and we're seeing that across the board. Same reason why you're feeling maybe that trade shows aren't as effective as they used to be, or that the marketing message used to have, we're the best and the biggest, and it's not working. Why? because that workforce is dramatically changing, and now's the time to make that change. So anyways, a couple great takeaways. Thanks again for listening. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. We'd love to answer them on the show, industrialsage.com/questions. If you're listening on iTunes, we'd love a review. If you're on social media, hey, share our stuff. We'd love the love. So thanks for watching, and we'll be back next week with another awesome episode of Industrial Sage.